We often consider our memories to be faithful representations of what actually occurred. But what if it were possible to remember an event that never happened? This phenomenon, which we first discussed in a previous video, is called the Mandela Effect, where large groups of people, sometimes complete strangers, all remember with astonishingly similar detail events that never happened. The term was coined by a woman who falsely remembered Nelson Mandela's death in prison in the 1980s in detail, despite that he actually died in 2013. She argued that her story, which she has since shared with thousands, is evidence for parallel universes, a glitch in the matrix, so to speak. Skeptics, however, contend that the Mandela Effect is a matter of psychology, a sort of collective failure in memory wrought by common experiences. Welcome! In this episode of The Mysterious Five, we'll learn about even more examples of the Mandela Effect. Number 5. Berenstain or Berenstein? Many people remember the Berenstain Bears children's books and cartoons, which followed the lives of a family of bears who, as the story goes, live in a tree in bear country. Even if the details of the lessons learned in the show are long forgotten, the distinctive title script is very vivid in the minds of viewers, young and old. Ask anyone, they are likely to say it is spelled Stein. But despite the overwhelmingly similar collective memories of those who watched it, Berenstain was never spelled with an E, but instead with an A. Here is where it gets crazy. One theorist has proposed their own explanation to this mystery, that is, evidence for an alternate universe. They suggest that all universes are four-dimensional. Our current timeline has 3 real space dimensions making up our 3D world, as well as a single time dimension which exists on the complex imaginary plane. The proposed alternate universe is opposite to our world, and the dimensions are flipped, with 3 spatial dimensions on the complex plane and 1 real-time dimension. But because both worlds are bound to the same rules, they weakly attract. Occasionally they can get too close and may spill over into each other without us noticing, which may be why nobody realized the switch from E to A. Skeptics reject this explanation and say that the alternative E spelling is due to our familiarity with Stein ending surnames. Because Stein is much more common than Stain, our brains fill in the gaps with what makes the most sense given everyday patterns. But how can we accept this when faced with photos such as this one found on Reddit? The image shows both A and E spellings of the word, further validating the possibility of an imperfect invaded reality with residual instances of the previous world. Number 4. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. With his signature cardigan, kind voice, and pleasant cast of characters, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood captivated many young audiences with his simple lessons in honesty and kindness. Airing between 1968 and 2001, his children's program was and is beloved by many. His theme song likely sounds familiar to you, but while many may believe the opening line goes, "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood," Mr. Rogers in fact says something slightly different. Instead, he sings, "It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood." Perhaps the difference is just a slip of the tongue from a fuzzy childhood memory. But to proponents of the Mandela Effect, the subtle switch from the to this is evidence of a parallel universe, like we just discussed. To those who believe we are constantly sliding into other worlds, it doesn't make sense that the collective memories of so many people could be wrong. So to them, our reality is in fact the incorrect one. Not everyone agrees with this, though. What if these slight changes are not assimilated elements from another universe, but a clever trick of the mind? What if our brains are capable of editing our memories without us even knowing? Surprisingly, the brain can. The brain does not tolerate stress well, and to remedy this, psychologists suggest it will default to a less stressful but false version to keep things smooth. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood is much more awkward to process than "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood." So we just remember the easier one instead, even though it's wrong. Be it a slip of the mind or a slip of the universe, we may never know for sure. Number 3. Mirror, Mirror. In the 1937 Disney classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the evil queen, bent on being the most beautiful woman in all the land, speaks her famous line. But what does she actually say? Ask anyone and they will probably answer, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" But the queen says, "Magic mirror." See it for yourself.
What wouldst thou know, my queen?
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
To understand this example a little better, let's delve into the history of the story. Written in the 19th century by the Brothers Grimm, it was originally called Snowdrop, later changed to Snow White. If you look at the original German, the queen addresses the mirror as Spieglein, Spieglein.
Spieglein, Spieglein an der Wand,
which translates directly into Mirror, Mirror. It's possible that Disney may have initially used the original German translation for the film and was only later changed when our reality was altered by a bump from an alternate world. In this reality, the Disney movie has always said Magic Mirror, but our memories may be residues from an old timeline, which appear to flip-flop from person to person depending on your experiences. We see evidence of this in old books published by Disney in 1952, where they use Mirror, Mirror instead. And yet, we still see inconsistencies, as this Disney book, published in 1937, shows Magic Mirror. Why do both lines exist? Supporters suggest that activity at CERN, a particle physics laboratory containing a quantum machine called the Hadron Collider, may have a part in somehow altering reality. Some people have noticed an increasing trend in Mandela Effect since 2010, which, coincidentally, is around the same time that study began using the Hadron Collider. Could the experiments at CERN have tampered with space-time and sent out flakes of our reality without us noticing? You decide. Number 2. Bologna Central Station. Another example of this crazy phenomenon is that of the clock in Bologna Central Station, located in Italy. At 10:25 a.m. on August 2, 1980, Central Station was bombed, resulting in almost 300 casualties. In the blast, the station's main clock was also damaged, but even though it was repaired soon after, a study conducted showed that the overwhelming majority of people were convinced the clock has remained broken since. Many went even further, claiming that it has also been set to the time of the blast. Even more baffling is that every single railway employee interviewed agreed that yes, the clock had in fact been non-functional since 1980. They were not entirely wrong, and depending on your thoughts on space-time, they may still be right. To honor those lost on that fateful day, the city stopped the clock at exactly 10:25 a.m. every year on the anniversary of the tragedy until the clock eventually broke in 1996. In this timeline at least. Afterwards, the clock was turned into a memorial, permanently set to 10:25 a.m. How could so many people not notice the clock worked for 16 years after the attack? Interestingly, though, scientists have found that the mind is so powerful that it can sometimes wrong rights instead of the other way around. As we learned with the switch from the to this in Mr. Rogers' theme, the brain likes to keep things simple. But truth be told, it is actually really bad at doing this accurately. Memories can be prone to mental filters, which sort experiences based on how well they match up with other memories. If they don't, the brain will throw them out. So, even though the residents of Bologna likely had old memories of the clock working, these became too stressful for the brain to match with new memories of a broken clock, so it opted for the version of events that was simpler to process, wiping out everything else, even if it was right. Number 1. Dolly's Braces. Perhaps one of the most compelling instances of the Mandela Effect is the mystery of the disappearing braces in the 1979 James Bond film Moonraker. After crashing a cable car in a failed attempt at besting Bond, Jaws, a mercenary fitted with unsightly steel teeth, is saved from the rubble by a beautiful woman, Dolly. As the joke goes, when Jaws smiles at Dolly, we see she's a metal mouth just like him, and they immediately fall in love. The scene has lived on for decades in the memories of fans, but when we watch the scene itself, her braces are gone. Because her braces were seen as a vital part in the comedy of the scene, people swear that something must have changed. The deeper we dig, the stranger things get. Interestingly enough, Blanche Revelec, the actress who played Dolly, denies having ever worn braces, consistent with the clip from the movie, and yet there are several pop culture references to their love story complete with braces. Old websites describing the cast portray Dolly as a beautiful blonde with pigtails, glasses, and braces, just like fans swear. Similarly, this ad from Finland shows the actor playing Jaws smiling at his cashier in the grocery store, and when she smiles back, she has a mouth full of braces. Surely this is a direct reference to the cable car scene everyone remembers so clearly. Stranger still, one fan, a digital editor by trade, found some interesting inconsistencies in the video that show some evidence of a brace-faced Dolly remaining in our universe, though that version of her has largely been erased. They show close-up footage of Dolly's teeth where we notice anomalies like small horizontal grid lines common to orthodontics in that era. In other clips, we see strange silvery flashes off her teeth, similar to light reflecting off metal braces. In later scenes where Dolly is drinking from a champagne glass, he notes a dark line going across her teeth that cannot be a shadow, but was likely retroactively edited out, possibly by an invading timeline that got too close to ours. What do you think of the mystery of Dolly's disappearing braces? What do you think about the Mandela Effect? Is it possible that these examples are a glimpse into an alternate dimension, or simply a collective misremembering of events? Tell us what you think. Don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you find it interesting, or if you find it mysterious, please like and share this video. And be sure to subscribe because you don't want to miss what's next. As always, thank you for watching.